right. Good evening, everybody. This is the Town of Sherborn Zoning Board of Appeals. We are here to discuss two continued hearings for the 40B Greenwood project and the 40B Farm Road project. We're going to take up the 40B Greenwood project first because it's a little bit simpler. There's a lot of moving parts in the other one. There had been some requests to me by email to my town email for a summary of how the 40B worked. I don't see the people who requested that on the phone. So if somebody wants me to sort of recap how the process works, I will, but I better see a hand raised. Otherwise, we're going to move along. Okay, we'll do that another time. Great. All right, so questions came in. These will be for you, Mr. Murchison, or you, Mr. Haverty, about the site control and the status of the option. And the person asking the question was asking whether you had exercised your option or what the status of it was. Can you give us a short answer on that, please?
Yes, I have exercised that option through, I believe it's the end of July of next year.
Okay, great. And the second question, sorry?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, Bob, you've extended that option period, right?
Sorry, did I misspeak? I extended the original option through July of 2024. That's correct.
Got it. Okay, so site control through having an option that's still in effect, but that you haven't exercised it yet, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, got it. That counts. All right, and the other question from the same person was, is the Bailey Trail accurately represented on the plans you've submitted, and are there any plans to relocate it or change it? I think you answered that, but why don't you tell us again?
Sure. So first of all, the Bailey Trail is not on the subject property for this particular hearing. But I can tell you that the meets and bounds of that trail were recorded by on a recorded site plan it was by Joyce Hastings of GLM back in the day, and my surveyor used those meets and bounds to place it on our plan. So I'm
okay. That's not answering the exact question, but it's close, which is,
sorry.
Do your plans accurately show where the Bailey Trail is? I think
Yes,
the answer to that's yes.
Yeah. Yes, I believe they do.
Yeah. Okay. And are there any plans in your project to make any changes to the Bailey Trail?
With regard to the Greenwood project?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Told you these were easy ones. Okay. And then the final trailing administrative matter on Greenwood was, I think when the waivers list first came in, there was some discussion of maybe there were some administrative errors in that. Maybe some cut and paste. Have those been revised? Are they going to be revised? What's the plan on those?
You're testing my memory, Rick. I believe they have been revised, but I would have to go back offline and double check.
Okay.
I believe the answer is yes.
Yeah, it's not a. I think it was a Mary Moore comment of August 21st that raised them, and so at some point we'd hope that your team would fix what came up.
I believe they are fixed, Rick. Yes.
Okay. Jeannie, we can check and see if there were new ones submitted. Okay. So I think in terms of substance on 40B on the Greenwood project, isn't our major item the Tetra Tech peer review report that they submitted 2 days ago on the 2nd? Steve, I think you sent in a pretty detailed letter on Greenwood, right?
Yes, I submitted that on October 2nd.
Correct. Okay. Do you want to give us sort of a 2-minute walkthrough of that, and we'll see if people have questions on it? I'm only trying to limit airtime because there's so much else to cover on the other project.
Sure. It's fairly simple A&R type situation for this project. So we didn't have any major comments that would kind of limit or change the development program. Kind of sticking to the Bailey Trail connector thing, we asked that the applicant kind of coordinate with the town to determine level of access to that maybe. It looked like I think the only issue could be like during construction with the road being so like it's only about 18 feet wide. I could see issues maybe during construction, but we had asked earthwork calcs be put on the plans just to get an idea of how much material is going to be coming in or out. Asked that they provide a construction management plan, which would detail truck routes and project phasing and things like that. And then sight lines at the driveways because it is a windy road. Safety items like that. There were some stormwater BMPs proposed, rain gardens and trenching along the driveways. We had asked that if there were any test pits or anything, any due diligence performed for those, just to confirm depth to groundwater and soils and things of that nature. Just going down the list here. I think the bigger thing is water supply, determining if they actually have the supply there. Obviously it will be permitted through the Sherborn Board of Health, but having some well data is certainly would be a condition on this. I would suggest because everything hinges on that well.
Yeah,
For water
technically
supply.
it'll be permitted through us, but we'll be looking to the Board of Health to give us some guidance on it. Okay. That's great. And Bob, did you and your team have any chance to look at the peer review comments yet?
Yeah, we actually just received their comments this morning. But I've been through it and I agree with Steve. I didn't see a whole lot that was terribly controversial, and we'd be happy, given a few days, to reply in detail to his comments. But I didn't see any, particular red flags or anything. It all looked appropriate.
Okay. And is anyone else here to speak to either the peer review comments or any other aspect of the 40B project on Greenwood Street? That's the 4 units, the 4 essentially single family homes is what they look like. All right, I don't see any hands, Jeannie. I'm not hearing anybody. So everybody's anxious to talk about the other one. All right, I'd suggest that what we do is continue. Well, let's take a moment, Jeannie, and talk about what our next hearing date is going to be, because then we'll continue Greenwood to there and move on. We're trying to coordinate and not be in conflict with the Board of Health, right? So what's a date 3 to 4 weeks from now that we could so we've got another meeting unrelated on the 23rd. What do we have in early October, Jeannie?
In early October, early November.
Yeah, sorry, it is early October, early
It
November.
is early October. We have the meeting on the 23rd, and that's really it. So if we can avoid the first Wednesday in November because of the Board of Health meetings.
Right. So what's the first Tuesday in November?
It is November 6th.
All right.
And not to correct you, Jeannie, but I think it's November 7th is Tuesday.
Yep.
Oh, Tuesday. Sorry, November 7th. It is. Sorry.
Okay. Board members, how would November 7th work on a Tuesday for another hearing? Todd?
Seeing that as election day.
No, good. We can't do anything on election day.
I don't think there's an election this year. I can check with the town clerk quickly, but for some reason, I don't think we have an election this year.
Okay, it's just popping up generically on my calendar as election day, so I'm just raising that some sensitivity.
Yeah. Okay. Jonathan, if it weren't election day?
November 7th is fine for me.
All right. And Zach, if you can hear us?
Fine. Yep, fine for me as well.
Okay. All right. So for now, we're going to, I move that we continue the Greenwood 40B to Tuesday night, November 7th, 2023, 7 p.m. That's my motion. Any second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, do it by roll call. All in favor say aye. Novak votes aye.
Fitch, aye.
Labby, aye.
Zach, I.
Okay. You heard four of them, right, Jeannie? Yes?
Hi, I just spoke with the town clerk and cities have elections, but we do not. So the 7th is fine.
Okay, great. And we all just voted to continue to the 7th. So there we are.
Okay.
All right, great. All right, moving along to 40B, the 40B on Farm Road Homes. Three sort of administrative items. One is that the site control issue is still open. I think if everybody recalls that there was an exchange of punches, but nobody threw a knockout. Mr. Haverty still thinks he's right, and Mr. Murphy still thinks he has the better end of the stick. And Mr. Moore weighed in on the 3rd of October with a letter saying, these are my words, not his, that the developer couldn't have it both ways in terms of arguing that they had the benefit of it being conservation land next door to protect their wells, but not being restricted by the title restriction. And I do think as a lawyer, actually, the developer can have that both ways. The property being conservation land for one purpose would not necessarily mean it was under a title restriction for another purpose. So I'd suggest to my fellow board members that the fact that it's being treated differently under different jurisdictions is not necessarily troubling as a lawyer. Jonathan, how do you feel about that?
I agree with you.
Okay. Todd, Zach, and anybody okay with that?
Yeah, on that specific point, that makes sense.
Members of the public have additional comments or anything new on the site control issue, which we all agree is not settled and a matter of some debate. Let's see anything new there. Okay. The next sort of administrative item is we've gotten a letter from Arthur Fenno, October 2nd. Sorry, October 2nd, arguing that the proponent should be judicially estopped from arguing that there is no traffic problem. And Arthur, if you're on here, I'll try to characterize your letter in very brief, which is there was a lot that was up for development in 2016 across the street from Mr. Murchison's personal residence, called it Lot 69F, subject of many hearings before this board. In the course of those hearings, Mr. Murchison argued, among other things, that the building permit should not be granted on grounds of traffic. That project is around the corner from this one. It's at least several hundred yards, maybe half a mile away. It's not 5 miles away, but it's definitely not next door, and it's on a different street. And the applicant here is not Mr. Murchison in his personal capacity. It is Phoenix Farm Road Partners, which is an LLC. So board members, and you especially, Jonathan, it seems to me that litigation estoppel is not going to apply there on a different site, different parties around the corner.
I agree with that. They are
Okay.
different parties.
Okay. Todd, Zachary, do you have anything to add on that?
I have nothing to add from a legal perspective on that now.
Okay. And Arthur Fenno, I see you. Do you want to add more? I mean, I thought your letter spoke well for it. Spoke for itself, as we say.
Sure. I appreciate it. Can you hear me? Is that
Yep.
okay?
Yes.
I don't have anything to add in particular. I think I tried to spell it all out there so that you could review it. I mean, yes, I appreciate the distinction between an LLC and the manager of it or whatever, but I think for these purposes, it's functionally one and the same. There are many many issues of correspondence, the deeds and other things that have been part of this record, which speaks synonymously with Phoenix Partners Farm Road and Mr. Murchison. I do get that distinction. I just don't think it has much of a difference here. I think they're essentially fungible for these purposes. I get it's on Lake Street, which is probably half a mile or so from here. But I think it's roughly the same part of Sherborn. It's not, for instance, Route 27 or Route 16 or some other like significant area. And I think that the gist of it isn't so much sort of different parties, different situations. The gist of it is that the representation that it was, one house was going to have some significant impact enough to take it to court and testify about that. And whereas 32 houses apparently is not going to have that same level of impact, let alone 32 times as much, which would sort of be the natural, logical result of that. So
Right.
that's it. Thank you.
And we can certainly weigh how we feel about 32 residences versus one residence. I just don't think he's prevented from bringing the issue up.
I agree with that.
I'll defer. It's your decision. So I'll
Okay.
defer that.
No, we appreciate that. I'm also going to on the administrative side, because we're probably going to run on for a bit if my notes are even close to right. Suggest that we designate Tuesday night, November 7th, 7 p.m. for the continuation of this hearing, assuming we don't wrap it up tonight, which I think is about as likely as me being the next Speaker of the House and Congress, but before the end of the evening. And that's not very likely. So how do people feel about continuing to that date when we continue? Is that going to work? Board members?
Yes.
Yes.
Jack?
That's fine.
Okay. All right, great. All right. Enough with the trivial pursuits. Let's go to substance. If my notes are correct, a complete new set of site plans was submitted Friday morning, 9:38 a.m. And I think one of the things I'm going to ask the development team for, and it's probably going to be much easier for you to do than Tetra Tech or anybody else, is a written list of the changes. It may be as simple as they're identical to the ones we submitted before, except we filled in this, we filled in that, we added this, we added that. But someone needs to write that out, because to those of us who are not as familiar with the plans, they're just a new set of plans, and we can't start from scratch.
Happy to do that, Rick.
Okay, great. Mr. Moore. You have your
Hi,
hand up.
Brian Moore, 49 Farm Road. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, our desire, people who are involved in logging in every couple of weeks, Rick, thanks for running these. We have a really, really tough time keeping up with the 12 different versions of the 18-page plans with all the different stormwater and all the different things. And the town and our experts are all trying to, hit this moving target in terms of what are the final plans. So if there's a way that they could is there a way that they could preface every update with a little, like a RADA sheet that just states, here are the modifications to the plans, so that experts and the town experts and the volunteers could kind of wade through this muck and try to figure out whether it was just a typo, whether it was a substantial change or not. I think that would be very helpful. I don't know if you have the power to do it, but I would be in favor of that.
No, I think that's a fair ask. I'm not sure it's necessarily an errata sheet. When I see it all the time in construction plans, it's an update sheet. We changed the spec for this door. We changed the size and type and make of this this dry well. It's a pretty normal construction process, but I think we do want to ask the construction team the development team to do that each time the plans morph. Bob, I'm assuming that the plans are now largely set, although they may have some changes, but I'm assuming what you propose for stormwater and drinking water and septic are all pretty well, and site design generally are all pretty well dialed in at this point on those 929 plans.
Yeah, just to perhaps state the obvious, but nothing material changed in the plans that were updated. It was the stormwater, which obviously we'd not given you, that we updated. And I'm not aware of any other material changes besides adding the stormwater to the plan. And I'd be more than happy to, we try to give you a kind of a narrative of what's changed. To Brian's point, this is a complex project, and we're things will change over time as we have discussions with you, and appropriately so. So I can't guarantee that things don't change. We're doing our
Right.
best.
No. I think we're all asking is that as things change, they get disclosed in a writing so we can track them.
That's a fair request, absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. Next up, traffic. And let me recap where we've sort of swum around a little bit on that. The initial Vanass submission that was shared with the town did not happen to include a data exhibit that was pretty lengthy, but that some people thought was important. Now that data has now been submitted, and it came in Friday night at 5:39 p.m. But meanwhile, Tetra Tech, doing their job, had gone ahead and done a peer review and submitted it on the day before with 25 suggested conditions based on the information they did have. And also, Arthur Fenno at least had requested the traffic data. I'm not sure, had anybody else other than Arthur come in with additional traffic related comments? I don't think I saw them, Jeannie. I'm asking
I
this group.
don't,
Actually, Rick, on our, I think it was on our last call, I had requested not just the data, but also a representation of scenarios and not just an average representation.
Ah, okay. And thank you. This is why we need multiple minds remembering things. Uh, eh, Bob, is Todd's request covered in the new data?
I don't know I have no expertise in this space and I don't know the answer. What I would ask, Todd, is if you could just put down what you're looking for in a simple email so that, so I'm using, specifically your request when I check in with Jeff. And with regard to the data that the board requested, I believe it was raw data. It was our intent to provide that when we responded to the peer review letter, which we just received on Friday. Just to speak to that for a second, if it's all right, Rick.
Well, before we go a little further,
sure.
All right. So on Todd's question, Todd, if you would just email Jeannie what it is you want, then she can get it around to everybody and get it posted, and we'll all be good.
Great, thank you.
Very good.
Bob, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that we just got Tetra Tech's review on Friday, so we haven't, and we've been through it generally, and I can say that we're comfortable that we understand what they're asking for, and again are comfortable that there aren't any major issues. Because they're asking for a couple of additional studies, we couldn't get it done in a few days. It's going to take a week or two. But there's nothing there that really concerns the expert. Let's put it that way.
Well, and that's consistent with what Tetra Tech said, which is, okay, they've got more data, but they've also got our letter. So just wrap it all together in response to our letter and come back next time with that. Who is identified in the chat as iPhone?
Hi, Rick. It's Mary Moore calling.
Okay.
Sorry, my camera's not working.
So there was also a request in the meeting to consider the impact of train crossings on fire response. I don't know if that was in the Tetra Tech letter. Courtney, I'm looking at you. Was that in there?
We asked them to study or evaluate the safety conditions, and that should be included as part of that as, emergency response.
Okay, so if it's not clear in your letter, again, if you would just send a short email to Jeannie so she can get it in the information flow, and then Bob can get it to the people at Vanass, and we can get it flushed through.
Thank you,
That
Rick.
sound like a good process? Okay. All right, so next steps on traffic are, we got Todd's...
Rick, Arthur had his hand up.
sorry, I didn't see Arthur.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I put it down because you were moving on. But I don't. There might have been generally something in regards to public safety, but I think the unique issue of Farm Road is that it's the second fire department station, and I don't think that was addressed in the Tetra Tech response or the original response for that matter, or the original report.
Okay, so same solution. Ping out short email to Jeannie. She can get it in the information flow, and then Bob will have a nice little package of one, two, three things to send the people to the people at Finance so they can respond to the people at Tetra Tech. Sound smart? All right. Maybe it doesn't sound too stupid. I'll settle for that. Okay. And so I would rate the next steps on traffic as we let those requests and Vanessa's response to them flush through. In a perfect world, that will get to you, Tetra Tech, in time for you to react by next meeting. But if you don't get it in time, just say we didn't get it in time. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. There are a number of aspects of this project relating to water. And sort of at a global level, there was a detailed letter from our Groundwater Protection Committee on September 18th. Excuse me for just a moment. And there's an excellent summary of what they're looking for on page 7 of 7 in there. There's also an email that came in last night on the 3rd from the Conservation Commission. And I mention those globally only because those two letters speak to all of drinking water supply, stormwater, and septic system. And so I think as the Tetra Tech team takes a look at those things and the development team takes a look at the how people react to drinking water, stormwater, and septic, I'd ask especially Tetra Tech to keep in mind those inputs from groundwater protection and CONSCOM, so you can say whether you agree with them, disagree with them, think they're great ideas, think they're terrible ideas, whatever. That's what you're here for, is to tell us what you think. Okay. Drinking water supply. We sort of started on that very briefly last time. Bob gave a very brief summary of why he thought a private drinking water supply was the right way to go, and why I thought DEP thought it was as well. Maybe, Bob, you can just recap that quickly, and then we can get into some of the comments on it. Can you give us the 2-minute recap?
Sure. We looked at the possibility of being a public water supply. That was possible. The issue that concerned us was it forced us to put all of the wells in very close proximity with each other, approximately 50 feet apart, in an area just to the north of the septic system. It did meet the DEP standards in terms of separation, but it just wasn't the optimal place for the wells to go. We really felt like getting them further from the septic system, further from the neighbors' wells, and up bordering along the town conservation land made a lot of sense. And so we went to DEP. We had a multi-month process where they came back and asked some questions, and we made adjustments to what we originally proposed for their consideration. And ultimately, they made what's called a preliminary determination that we would not, under the proposed well locations and the various parameters, that they would not consider us a public water supply. This is a way of approaching water that has been used by myself when I developed Abbey Road. I believe it was also used, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, but at 59 North Main Street. This is not an unusual way of approaching it. You know, it doesn't happen a lot because there just aren't that many wells that are done, right? But in towns where well water is the norm, this approach is not atypical. Right, I think that's my summary.
Okay. And I think you're right that was used at a smaller project at 59 North Main Street, whereas for a same size project over at the Fields of Sherborn, they initially proposed private and then wound up public water supply, but different sites, different designs, it's not always the same.
In different reasons, I think that's right.
Okay, and so we got comments on the public water supply from Sarah Raggy, a letter of, I think, September 19. Sarah, I see you're here. Do you want your letter to speak for itself? Do you want to be heard? What's your pleasure?
Um, you can review the letter. It was just a documentation of, I used to live at Abbey Road, and it's just straightforward documentation about some complexities of these systems, and that the water room is a room when so it's not like a home well. I lived in a house for 38 years. I had one uh, pump repair for $850, and that was it. These rooms are, my only analogy is it's going into the bowels of a ship, into the boiler room. They're very, very complex. And I think it's a huge burden on homeowners in general to have to be responsible for all the equipment and water testing and everything associated with using a well and private water supply. I find, I think at Abbey Road it works because there are 6 units responsible for each room. And, there's a real sense of team playing there. But I really would find it problematic to think of this going into any kind of larger community, and certainly not a 40B.
Okay, thank you. And Brian Moore, I think, also sent in a letter on September 27th with a number of things, including some I think Brian Horsley I'm butchering his name. Mr. Horsley's input. Brian, do you want to speak to your letter, or do you want to let it speak for itself?
Thank you, Rick. I think the letter offers very, very detailed information as to how the location and clustering of these wells is really doing a disservice to other people who are relying on groundwater in the neighborhood for their drinking water. I think the applicant just used the term forced his hand into this situation, but the applicant's the one who decided that he wanted to put in 32 homes on a couple of acres. So, I'm surprised that there hasn't been more of a genteel and kind of subtle approach rather than just trying to hit the nail with a bigger hammer to make it go into the wood. It's a very, very limited resource in this part of town, and those of us who rely on it have already been told by our experts that it is only a matter of time before we will have to put new wells in. And that's a fact, and that's been in front of town boards, and that's one of the reasons why you see me at every single meeting. Thank you.
Okay, so if you want this board to weigh outside expert input that the wells in the area are failing and there's not adequate water supply in the area, please bring it forward. That would be relevant. That would be something we could consider. But we need to see the report and see who the expert is and things like that. So please submit those because it's
Could
relevant.
you look simply at the appendix to the letter I just submitted? Mr. Horsley's report is in there showing that nitrates.
Okay. All right. So if you're saying everything you wanted to submit is in your letter, then I withdraw my comment.
Well, not everything, but like a developer, I reserve the right to modify over time.
Okay. Well, right. But we can't. You hear me too that if it's not on the record before us, we're not gonna give it much weight. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Hey, Rick, this is Zach. I have a question about the wells, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Regarding the public water supply and the equipment rooms that were just mentioned, is there any analysis of the, a 20 or 30-year maintenance schedule, costs, things of that nature with respect to public water supply versus, the alternative? Didn't know if we had any information.
Yeah, no, that is one thing that we will hope to hear from Tetra Tech on is the actual real life operational and management problems of both these systems. Because in each case, whether it's a public water supply or private water supply, it's going to be a complex well system feeding a lot of people drinking water. And the question is going to be which of those two is better and more appropriate for this development. So very, very fair question. Ms. Raggy.
Just briefly, the expenses associated with I think the wells, and Bob, you can correct me if I'm wrong, were drilled in 2013. Is that anyway?
I think it was 14, but yes, sir.
Okay, so and the I don't know about the earliest residents at Abbey Road, but I'm pretty sure they were around 2014. When?
The first resident moved in January of 2017.
Okay, 2017. Okay, I moved in 18 in April, and already have had that a couple $1,000s worth of work needed in the water room. And I know of another block that had over $5,000 worth of work done. I do know part of that expense was an elected water softener system. But these things are expensive. That's only within a 5-year period. You know, that's a very small fraction of time that we expect our water to hold up when we turn on the faucet.
Okay, so Steve Booley, I know you're listening carefully to this, but one of the things we'll want from you guys is sort of which of these is going to be the better deployment, short term and long term, for this type of project. Bob, I assume when Sarah says water room, you've got a series of private water systems there, and each one it has its own little box within the condominium that is the room where that well it comes in and is distributed out to its units.
Yeah. So Rick, if you would indulge me in kind of explaining a couple of things about this issue, because I think in some ways the answers are almost the reverse of the way the arguments are being made. When you're a public water supply, and I would put up Woodhaven as an example of this. They have one water system to provide, and they have multiple wells that feeds into one water system. It is a very complex system, and there's all of the testing that is associated with a public water supply. At Abbey Road, and I'm only talking about Abbey Road because it would be similar at Farm Road, or as proposed. At Abbey Road, one well serves 6 homes, and Sarah's absolutely right. There's a room for that. One of the cost that the folks have experienced at Abbey Road is because we ended up needing to do fire suppression. So we needed, because of fire suppression, because we had 3 homes in a building, and I learned a lot from doing this, is that is what drove a lot of complexity in the water system that should not exist at Farm Road. What I would argue actually is that it would be far more expensive for a homeowner if we have a public water supply, because then you're talking about a very large system. You're talking about all kinds of, testing and appropriate testing for a public water supply. But what I would say is that all of this, I think Sarah, I would say to Sarah, the costs associated with the problem that you're referring to, and as you know, even though it wasn't my responsibility, I was over there immediately trying to help and resolve the problem. It was not actually driven by water. It was driven by the complexity of a fire suppression system needing water. It was transducers. It was all kinds of complicated stuff that won't exist in a Farm Road scenario. Okay. And, the sense that if you have a public water supply, then the homeowners don't pay for problems when they occur is just incorrect. And in fact, if it's a public water supply, because of the extensive testing, it's going to cost the homeowners a lot more money. So everything about being a public water supply, from the design and everything else, is going to make it more expensive. Now, I understand that people think, and I don't disagree completely, that a public water supply testing regime is going to be somewhat safer. Of course it is. If you want the perfectly safe well, you're going to test a lot. And we all need to decide how to allocate our resources to that, right? And at Abbey Road, Sarah, if she cared deeply about that testing, could have tested at the level of a public water supply. She'd have to pay for it, of course. There's no free lunch here. The cost of all of this doesn't go away. It's borne by the homeowners. And that, I think, is misunderstood sometimes.
Okay, yeah, and you do make an excellent point, Bob, which is the use of the term public water supply for regulatory purposes is hugely confusing because most people would think the town's paying for it. It's a public water supply, but it's still going to be paid for 100% by the people who live there, whether it's a private water supply for regulatory purposes or whether it's a public water supply for regulatory purposes. It won't matter. The town of Sherborn is not paying for it. Bob, why will the fire suppression be different at Farm Road?
Because the code is very different when you have 3 homes in a building versus 2 homes in a building. And so at Abbey Road, and not Sarah's home, because Sarah's home was in a 2-family building, but in the vast majority of the homes at Abbey Road, they were in 3-family buildings, and they required fire suppression. That fire suppression, when you don't have municipal water, becomes very complicated because you need to make sure you have the water if it's ever necessary for putting out a fire. And that frankly is what caused the complexity and the things that Sarah is alluding to, breaking. It wasn't a basic water system, which is what we would have at Farm Road. And we will not be doing fire suppression systems in the homes at Farm Road. Frankly, for just the reason that what I realized was not only was it more expensive for the developer to develop this very complicated water storage system, but it's also a lot more expensive for the homeowners, as Sarah is pointing out. And so that's not, we're not going to do that at Farm Road. Mr. Moore.
I just had a question about whether or not, as part of this process, developers can be asked to put some kind of financial assurance mechanism in place so that the people who buy the homes, the people who use the homes, are not going to be so burdened with those costs. Is that an option in this situation?
Probably not, because there's nothing in the town bylaws that says we can do it in a non-40B context. One of the 40B rules is you can't make up special rules for the 40Bs that don't apply to other similar projects. So
on the fire suppression. Sorry.
Yeah. So if the town said any multifamily project has to have a water supply that has a 50-year bond that the developer is going to pay the costs, we might be able to enforce that here. Although I think the developer would say, how does that stand up against the regional need for affordable housing? So it might not stand up anyway.
The follow-up question was that there's something about, I believe the applicant is proposing to use some tanks for water for the fire department for availability. Like, I guess you call them water tanks or for firefighting. But there's I don't know if there's a restriction about using private water supply wells to fill those or something. And maybe, I don't know, this is something maybe Steve should look into about whether or not there's some restriction. I know other people run into this where you can't, maybe Town Hall had this problem where you can't use a public water supply or some kind of supply well system to fill up the water tanks, but maybe I have that wrong.
Well, I'm not familiar with that, but it might be out there. I'm not a water supply or firefighting expert, but that's why we have Steve and his team to look those things up.
Rick, will you respond?
No, Bob. First, I want to hear from some other people. Are there other members of the public who are here to comment on the public water supply or drinking water supply, whether it's public or private, for these projects at this time? And this will not be the final end of this discussion because, among other things, we haven't heard from the Board of Health on this. So there will be further discussion. But anybody else from the public? And then Paul and Bob, we can get back to you guys. I thought I saw Tom Trainer on. Tom, you want the Groundwater Protection Committee's letter to speak for itself?
I do. And okay. Will be interested to hear comments from Tetra Tech. Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer Leminios, sorry.
That's okay. Limnios.
Okay.
I might have arrived a little bit late, so if my question was already discussed, please feel free to tell me that. I was trying to log on. I had some technical difficulties. I live in the Bear Hill neighborhood, so I'm on Oldfield. So there's, as I'm sure some of you are aware, there's someone who's putting in a private home in the neighborhood, which is, good and wonderful, but they are removing ledge rock. And there's a lot of concern about magnesium and lead, which Sherborn rock is very high in. Has that been discussed in general? Because I don't think it's just our area, like our neighborhood. I think it's actually Holliston, Sherborn, and surrounding towns that have this kind of ledge rock, that have these very high concentrations. And so anytime ledge rock is disturbed, I think that there's some concern that it's going to affect the water supply. So
Bob, I think you had a plan for that I think you mentioned either in the site walk or some other time. Can you sort of give us how you plan to deal with the magnesium release issue? Or no,
Yeah,
it's not magnesium, it's manganese, I think,
it's
right?
manganese.
Manganese. Yeah. My bad. Manganese and lead. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really fully answer the question, Rick, except to say that we did not encounter, and it was surprising to us, frankly. We dug 40, I think 40 odd test holes all around the property. And of course, we dug those holes where we're going to put roads or stormwater or septic or whatever, not on the side of the hill. But we encountered very, very little ledge in those areas. So that was the good news. I think probably what you're remembering is that someone asked along the way whether we intended to have basements. And the answer that I gave was that if we ran into ledge, we probably would not push forward with basements. And there are several reasons for that, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay. I think, sorry, did I?
No, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. That addresses my question. I think just my closing comment is that I feel that so every well owner is naturally responsible for their well, and that makes total sense to me. I think if there's going to be construction that could possibly, and it sounds like this has been addressed here, but in general, if there's going to be construction that could affect the aquifer, that could affect the groundwater supply, that's really out of the control of any individual well owner or really even any developer. And I think it could get really confusing if someone else comes in and puts in, even if this project handles it well, if another developer comes in and doesn't, and then someone's home somewhere ends up, or multiple homes end up with, undrinkable or unusable wells, which has happened, then who's liable and how do you sort out costs? I really feel like it would benefit the town and developers and basically everybody if we could just have some bylaws around the protection of the groundwater supply, which is, again, not under the control of any one given project or any one given homeowner.
Mr. Trainer, do you want to respond to that?
You don't have the time.
All right. Can you give us the elevator speech version? Tom Trainer is the head of our groundwater protection committee.
That's a very complex question, and seriously a huge topic. Private wells worked fairly well for Sherborn, hundreds of years, large lots where you're co-locating septics. But the more we're learning about water, the more sensitive tests like PFAS, we're learning we're not so protective of our groundwater with our current regulations. So seriously, I think you derail your hearing here.
Okay, all right. Then maybe the answer I'll try to give Jennifer with your hopeful approval is that's a large and complex issue, but in the 40B context, we can't make up new rules for a 40B that aren't on the books now. That's one of the zoning board's handcuffs.
Yeah. And that's a very reasonable and I think well-motivated restriction, which is why I think I'm sort of offering my comment, and I'm happy to, I don't want to derail the hearing, of course. So I'm just going to step aside now, but I just want to say, I really feel like it's in everyone's best interest, including developers to have these kinds of, to have town-wide bylaws that address the aquifer issue, because it's kind of like a river, you know, you can keep your dock clean, but if the river's gone bad, there's not much you can do about it.
Right. Mr. Haverty, are you trying to say something? Or is the mic just picking you up?
It's picking me up, sorry.
Okay, no worries. No worries. Sorry about that. Arthur Fenno.
Thank you. Excuse me. So the developer had mentioned that he had done some test drilling. I might not get the term exactly right. At various places, and that the ledge and manganese and lead weren't a concern. Can I ask, where is that represented, that there will be no appreciable increase as a result of this project to lead, manganese, or other harmful chemicals in the water? Like, where is it formally represented in writing?
I'm not sure those formal representations are part of a non-40B development in town, and therefore I'm not sure we can exact them here. So, you know, if in general there's something that we want to force the development team to do, it ought to be on the books in our rules and regulations now, and that gets enforced against others.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Haverty, did I get that right? Did I speak well for you?
Yes, you did, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mary Moore.
Thank you, Rick. I just had a question. Would Tetra Tech be confirming the sort of presence or non-presence of ledge in the different areas that were just represented, you know, in the commentary? Are they going to be confirming that, you know, the test pits confirmed no ledge, or, you know, how will they assure us that, you know, that is the case?
Right. No, that's a fair question and gets to a broader topic that was on my list, so we may as well take it up now. Steve, because we had so many 40Bs, I'm trying to remember who worked on which ones. Did you assist us with the fields at Sherborn?
No, I was involved. We were involved with Coolidge Crossing, I believe.
Coolidge Crossing, right? Okay, right. We had in the fields at Sherborn, because it was again a larger project, 32 units. All of these same issues, and a lot of the things that are in Mr. Moore's letter, and the attachments to it about, wait a second, how does the groundwater flow work? How does the effluent flow work? Which way is the groundwater working here? Is there really ledge here? Isn't there ledge here? You know, where's the water? Where's the water going to be? And ultimately, it came down to, we went to Nobis Engineering because everybody had experts, and all the experts completely disagreed, but they were very sure they were right. Right, like every other project, right? And ultimately we went to a guy named James Vernon of Nobis up in New Hampshire, who seemed to be sort of a respected neutral. And he gave some guidance that I think the board could live with and the developer could live with, and that's kind of the way we went ahead. But board members and also development team, I'm thinking that maybe going to somebody like that might be a good idea here, because it feels to me like we're headed for the same sort of ultimate disputes, which is, if you put this many homes on a septic system, this many bedrooms on a septic system, and it was about the same size, was in the mid 8,000s in terms of gallons per day, and all well water, not terribly far away, and some disputes among the parties about how wonderful the ground was or was not for distributing things. So I just plant that seed, and you might want to think about it. And I think we see where this discussion goes. I don't have a real good solution for it right now, but Steve, if where you ultimately come out on this is, we're not really sure what happens with the groundwater, maybe that's a possible solution. Maybe you will come back to us and say, guess what, we've got this dialed in, we don't need anybody else, and you know, that's why we have you.
Yeah, and certainly we did request that. I didn't see the well reports in or whatever was submitted to DEP in the submissions. I believe we requested that last week. We were hoping to get that in. Okay, I was hoping to get that information, because that would help with our review of that.
Deshaun Wang, are you on the phone? You're probably the custodian of that stuff, right? No, he's not. Bob is.
No, I'm the custodian. I'd be happy to provide it. You're looking
Okay.
for the correspondence back and forth between us and DEP. Is that what you're asking about?
Correct. And anything, if you've done any drilling on site to kind of.
We have not.
Okay.
We've not
right.
drilled them. We've done test holes, as you know.
Yep.
But we have not done any well drilling on site. No. But I'm happy to send you there were a couple letters back and forth, and obviously a lot of information that we submitted. I'm happy to share that with you.
Yeah, and no pumping tests then because there were no wells drilled.
No.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Other parties who want to weigh in on the drinking water issue. Mary Moore, one last time.
Thank you. Sorry, I just clarification. So there was an order of conditions issued for 65 Farm Road for the installation of single family water supplies, I think when the project had been envisioned differently. How is that impacted by this process?
Were those wells drilled, Bob?
No. There's an outstanding order of conditions allowing us to do that if we chose to, but we did not.
Right, but they chose not to. So it's a nothing in terms of this process. He got a permit but didn't do anything with it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? I'm not seeing anyone. Okay. So where I'd like to propose, board members, that we leave this is that we give Steve and his team some time to chew on it. If other people, Board of Health or others, come up with relevant information to share on the drinking water supply, please do so. There's no need to wait for the next hearing. You can definitely send us a letter or an email. Jeannie's putting together a very good record, and that way everybody sees the same information. So that's my request to everybody.
Rick, on that topic, could I just add one more thing? And that is that about 6 months ago, or I'm not sure, 6 or 8 months ago, when we were working with DEP on this preliminary determination that I've described, I did sit down with Daryl Beardsley and actually Jeff Waldron as well, and Jeremy Marcet, and gave them the explanation of what we were doing and why we were doing it. And I'm not aware, certainly based on that communication to them, of any objection from Daryl. So that's that out there.
Fair enough. We'll let them speak for themselves.
Yeah, I was just going to add, Rick, I think that water is really going to be a major issue for our study and concern.
Totally. As Tom Trainer said, we're all getting smarter on this, and part of the smarter is how unsmart we've been, maybe, as a group. Okay. Stormwater. Those plans landed during the day on Friday the 29th as well. Bob, do you or Deshaun want to sort of describe what you're doing and give us the sort of the 2-minute walkthrough on how your stormwater works, or do you want to let the documents speak for themselves?
I think it would make more sense to let them speak for themselves, and then let Tetra Tech, of course, weigh in, and we can kind of have a dialogue once we're at that point. If you would like for that, we can do that. I will tell you that at 6 o'clock tonight, Brian kindly reviewed our document very, very carefully, and he found some 21st century challenges of copy and paste and clerical errors, and we have repaired those and sent it to you all as of 6 o'clock tonight. And I did detail exactly what the changes were in my email, as we talked about at the very beginning of this meeting. So you have that in your inbox. But if you'd like for Deshang to give you a little talk about it, I'm happy to have him do that, but I don't feel like it's necessary at this point.
Well, Deshang, I'm not very bright, so why don't you take 2 minutes and make me smarter, to the extent that's possible.
Okay, we'll try to give a very short try. So basically, we employed low impact development techniques throughout the site. So the driveways is not curved. So the water is going to be shed into the driveway, common driveway side with the stone riprap aprons, and then go into water quality swales. And then so they will lead into four scattered out throughout the side infiltration basins, one in the back and one in the back left. So if you face in the property, and one is in the front left, and one is like a east to the middle, and then and one in the very front of the property. So it's a very uniform, and we try to, because of the isolated wetlands, we kept the water volume and the rate to the isolated wetland pretty much the same. And we also reduce all runoff and the peak flows to 5 control points. So we choose all the property surrounding the project site as a control point. So have 5 points to make sure we don't negatively impact, including Farm Road and the back property to the town conservation, and to the west wetlands, and then to the front right isolated wetlands. So that's basically so in a short. So we meet all the 10 stormwater standard. So so in detail, and as just Bob said, I appreciate it. Mr. Moore find some of my under the gun time of cut and paste some of carry on project information from others, and mainly in the stormwater pollution prevention plan, and so was kind of a midnight final work. I corrected, and again still appreciate it, and so we submit the new ones. So with the detailed stormwater checklist in it.
Okay, Mr. Moore, you have your hand up, your electronic hand, but you're muted.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Thank you. I just have a couple comments. I think, Steve, hopefully these are things that you can take note of, because they're really are the highlights of our review. The stormwater plan as presented by the applicant Ducheng completely misrepresents the area subject to flooding on the property. That's just a fact. Number two, there were many inconsistencies between the stormwater plan hash-tune method model and the actual test pits that they did on site. They used data from less than half of where they're putting drainage basins to calculate areas, where they were putting all of the stormwater. And it was completely short-sighted and really wasn't very thorough. And number three, people keep talking about cutting and pasting, but I can't cut and paste my well. I can't cut and paste new water supply on my land. And all of this water flows directly towards my land. It not only flows to my land, it flows directly to 53 Farm Road, which Bob just sold to someone else. So when I don't have a water supply in a year and a half, I'm going to be wondering why I wasn't a little more outraged at this meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments, members of the public, board members, anybody on stormwater at this point? Obviously, it's not closed up. Tom Trainer.
Thank you. This comment was in the groundwater's comments, but I just wanted to bring it to extra attention. Stormwater is very important. This is on a hill, a drainage to a busy road besides drainage to abutters. I took a very quick look at the proposed stormwater plan, and I'm not a stormwater engineer, but I've learned a lot about stormwater with a lot of the climate issues I'm following. And I can see that the design plans, followed current regulations, current modeling for 100-year 8-inch storm. But I guess my question to both the peer reviewer, the applicant's engineer, and this board, I think if you read the daily newspaper and what happening in other places, you know, the expected 100-year stormwater in this area is going to be 11 inches in several decades. You know, a sizable increase. So I trust these homes will be there 50, 100, 200 years from now. I hope there can be some consideration for expected larger storms in the stormwater engineering. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? Okay. Again, it sounds a little bit like a broken record here, but Steve, we're going to look to you and your team to digest all of this, and I hope you hear people loud and clear on looking ahead within the rules that we have now to making sure things are robust enough to take on expected higher stormwater flows, and making sure, you know, whether or not Mr. Moore is correct that the work was not done properly. That's more for you to evaluate than for us. And perhaps you can, if you find areas that it should be changed, you could suggest conditions to us or whatever. But we will look forward to your input on this very important point. You know, it is an area where there is already some back and forth between the neighbors about where the water goes, and so it's important that we get it right.
Certainly will do. And something we always recommend is using current, you know, precipitation frequencies, particularly from NOAA Atlas 14. Just looking at the numbers, I thought that they had been used in the report, but if Desheng could confirm that.
Yes, we used the NOAA Atlas 14. And so we not only use that, we actually analyzed more storm events than the DEP required. We did 2-year, 10-year, 25, 50, and 100, just because of the site. It's I don't think it's a controversial. I think it's have a high concern. That's why we picked so many control points to evaluate it. And if you're looking at it, there's pretty much no water will go to Farm Road. So the swales I found it was very, I jog in every morning to neighborhood, and rain or shine, I observe all the runoff, you know, conditions in different, you know, I live in Southborough, not too far there. The country style road, if you look in, checking in the stormwater checklist, the country style, which is fit Sherborn environment, it's gradually reduced runoff concentration to spot. So it's scattered throughout the site. That's why, well, I don't want to elaborate. You will read yourself, and I will be happy anytime. If you have questions, just drop me an email or pick up the phone. I will be happy to explain. So we did so many soil test bits. We are in the process compiled. We give a summary of it just for a quick reference, but all the test bits is shown on the existing site plan. You can find it. The depth to ledge, depth to high groundwater, and perk. We did so many perks. The rate is less than 2 minutes to about 7. I think it's only 1 or 2 hit like a 10. So it's a very permeable soil. Some of the test bits we hit more than 25 feet deep. So it's have done a lot of testing. So that's all I can tell you. And if you're looking into the report, you will see all those summaries. So,
yeah. Mary, thank you. Mary Moore.
Yeah, just if I could ask the ZBA to ask Tetra Tech to also look at the easements that are currently kind of underway. There's an easement for a pipe easement for 53 Farm Road that goes, I think, towards the front of our property. And then there's an easement for, I think, a horse parking area on Farm Road, as well as a pathway back to the town forest. But I think that's relevant to some of the stormwater discussions we're having here.
And where are those documented? Where would Steve Booley or Tetra Tech be able to see those? Those are news to me. So,
Shall I address it, Rick?
sorry.
Would you like me to answer your question? You asked
Sure.
where the
Sure.
document. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary is correct. There is an easement that shows on the plan. If you look on the site plan, you'll see it. There's a pipe easement there that's shown, and it's also obviously recorded. We do not intend to use that easement at this time. And so I just want to make you aware of that. The parking easement is an easement that was put on when I purchased the property. It's an easement for two individuals and no one else, two individuals to park on the southeast corner of the land when they come. As a practical matter, that easement has never been used, and it is only for two human beings.
Okay, so Steve, but both of those are on the plan, Bob, right?
Yes, correct.
All right, so Steve, take a look at them, and if you think they're material, speak up, and if you think they're not material, say that.
Great. I did have one question regarding, I guess, this project versus the two abutting properties. Are those under your Bob? Are those under your control through the chair? And are they part of this project?
So just to clarify, there is a home that is under construction, quite far along actually, at 53 Farm Road, and that I no longer own. I built it to the point of a foundation, and I sold it to a young entrepreneurial developer who is finishing that project. There's an existing home, as you can see, that shares a driveway with 53 Farm Road. That home is known as 55 Farm Road. It has now been put on a lot of about 1.5 acres, and I think that's fairly clear on the site plan. And I do own that, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
No problem.
When you say you own it, you mean Phoenix owns it?
A different entity.
Another entity owns it. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Deshaun.
I just make a quick clarification for the drainage easement, because I am still the engineer for 53 Farm Road. I have been there monitoring and supervise the construction over there. One of the reason we kept the easement there is because of that's the section of a low swale, the water taking the natural flow course there. And with that easement, we will have a control of the flow to make sure the new homeowner will not fill that area, and hence so the water will pitch into the farm road without any management. So that's I think that's it's purposely added on to that. It's for the benefit to make sure our new development will have the right and the proper paths to that downstream end.
So you're saying you don't actually use that easement for your water, but it's defensive in the sense of you don't want him filling it in.
That's correct. Yeah,
okay.
We don't want the 53 Farm Road fill that in, and so the water is coming to that way, sort of, because naturally that area was low before. If that easement area is totally filled it up, then the water is going to be end up in Farm Road, and including our overflow from the new development. So right now, if you go there, that area is kept low like a swale, as we originally designed, and we like that be kept in the same way as we originally designed for. So.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer Liminos.
Yes, I'm actually joined here by my daughter who has been listening and would like to add a comment. She lives here with us. Go ahead.
I'm a sophomore in high school. I'm 15 years old. And as somebody who's going to be buying properties in the near future, like 10, 20 years from now, I'd like to say that it's very good to adequately consider the effects of climate change regarding those properties and the surrounding area, and that insensitivity to this is extremely intolerable and should not be overlooked.
All right. Thank you very much. Well said. Mary Moore.
Yeah, just to follow up, I appreciate Desheng's clarification, but I think the easement has an expiration. in the recorded deed, the pipe easement that's noted at the front of 53. So if Tetra Tech could just make sure they understand really what it is, what is protected and what's not protected, and what's going to be used, what's not going to be used. And then I think that was it. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. Other comments on stormwater? Okay, Steve, I probably said it before, but I'll say it again. Obviously, when you're looking at this, give a very careful look to the Groundwater Protection Committee's letter and the CONSCOM email and the letter that came in from Brian Moore with particularly all the exhibits to those, because that's a lot of the sort of the prior learning on the area.
Certainly will do.
Thank you very much. Okay. And Steve, do you have a timeline of when you might be able to respond? I mean, to all that. I mean, there's a lot of data, there's a lot of thinking, there's a lot of this and that. So I don't think it's a cut and paste job, but I'm not an engineer, so tell me what.
I should have a letter over in about 2 weeks for
Okay,
everything.
great.
That'll include everything: stormwater, utilities, everything.
Okay, before next time. That'd
He's
be great.
relying on the easement.
I'm sorry. Who was that? Brian? Maybe that wasn't for us. Sorry. Inadvertent non-mute. Jennifer, you've got your hand raised. Do you mean to speaking?
No, I'm trying to put it down. Sorry.
Okay. All right. I hate it when my electronic hand won't do what I want it to. Okay. Septic system is, I think, the next thing up in our batting order. Again, sounds like the final design on that came in with the set of plans on the 29th. Bob, can I ask someone from your team to walk us through that? No, we can't ask
Rick,
that.
So the the site plan shows it, but the detailed Title V application is still a week or 10 days away.
Got it. All right. So we shouldn't be having anybody look at that at this point because it's not there yet.
I think that's right. And
okay,
we'll put that obviously to you, and they're on to Steve as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay. So everybody, what have I not covered tonight that we should cover?
Rick, can I just make a comment?
Yeah.
So our youngest participant here tonight made a comment that I just wanted to let her know that I spend a lot of time thinking about the issues that she raised. And I'm very proud of the fact that this community, if and when it's built, is designed to be the first fossil fuel-free community in the western suburbs of Boston. I think that matters, and I think it doesn't address every issue, but it addresses a significant issue. And I'm very proud of that, and I wanted to tell her that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sally Tipton.
Yes, I just had a question. I may have missed all of this, but I wondered whether the issue of whether this land really can be divided, developed, or whatever based on the seller's stipulation.
Yes. Okay. So we discussed that a little bit at the beginning. You might not have been with us for that. I'll try to recap it again. And Mr. Haverty and Mr. Murphy, if you're still on, you can jump in and tell me if I have it wrong. The developer's position is no, you don't need to worry about that title restriction. It's gone, and you don't have any jurisdiction to do anything about it anyway. And the Mr. Murphy, representing some of the abutters, is of the view that no, that restriction is still alive. You must observe it, and you must send the project away now because they don't have site control. And what we, the board, have decided for right now is we're not going to make that decision right now. Probably.
And why would that be? We were jumping through all these hoops. So if it can't be developed, why are we doing this?
Well, we don't know that yet, and that might be a 50-50. Okay, so if we guess wrong and turn it down, then the project is deemed approved the way they sent it in. No conditions, no controls, no nothing. So you want to be careful making that bet. I think, but you're right to keep this in mind. I urge everybody to keep in mind. board members, we haven't decided what to do about this. I think it's likely that we'll have some type of condition that they have to get title insurance or get a declaratory judgment or something like that, because it's a live issue that's out there. I know Mr. Haverty disagrees with me, but I know Mr. Murphy disagrees with him. So, and everybody's very confident in their position. And Mr. Fenno also sides with Mr. Murphy. So,
Thank you.
All right, fair enough. And Mr. Murphy, Mr. Fenno, or Mr. Haverty, if you think I mischaracterized your position, here's your chance to correct me. Nope. I can see his lips moving. I think it's supposed to be okay. All right. All right. Sarah Raggi. Sarah, you're muted.
That's the way I like it. No. I have a administrative question about the community, and I'm sure it's been discussed before, but I am unaware. Is this a community that will have public roads and then every private residence takes care of its own, snow plow and landscape, or how does the administrative end of the community work?
Bob, please answer.
Sure, Sarah. Much like Abbey Road, really everything will be, from that perspective, similar to Abbey Road. Obviously, we spoke earlier about the wells being owned by a smaller group of folks, but everything else will be dealt with by the condo association, just as at Abbey Road. They won't be private roads. It'll be just like Abbey Road. It'll be a private.
It's private.
Excuse me, it will not be a public road, just like Abbey Road will be a private.
Sarah Raggi.
Just to then I would strongly like the consideration for a public water supply to be examined in full, because it's true that any water supply is an end expense for homeowners, but if it's a public water supply, that seems to me a more level playing field for each homeowner to share the burden of it, versus one group of homeowners perhaps having their well go bust and they have to pony up for some very expensive fixes to their particular situation. I think it would make for a better unified community for everyone to be in the same boat with it. So I'm all done talking tonight.
Okay. And, it's really more for us to evaluate, but I'm sure Steve will make some mention of, this is the problem with every condominium facility of any type, whether it's water or otherwise. If everybody relies on the same water supply and there's something wrong with it, you're probably going to get all the votes across the condominium to do it. If there's a failure for one well that serves only 3 units, the rest of the units may say, "Meh, not my problem." And that's maybe not the most noble part of human nature, but it does happen a lot. So there we go. All right. I was asking what else I'd forgotten. Board members, Jeannie.
Nothing
General
that I
public.
can think of.
Okay. All right. In that case, I'm going to suggest that we continue this hearing to November 7th, 2023, 7 p.m. That is my motion.
I second that motion.
All right. Further discussion, board members? Hearing none. All right. All moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. And by the way, we'll combine this motion, with your permission, Jonathan, with a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Before you do that.
Too fast.
Do you want to approve those meeting minutes, or do you want to just wait till the next time?
Let's table the motion to continue and adjourn for a moment. I was good with the meeting minutes as last circulated. Other board members?
I agree.
Okay, so I moved to approve the minutes as distributed by Jeannie Guthrie for, it was July 1 date and
7/6 and August 1st.
Right. July 6th and August 1st. All in favor of approving those minutes? Aye. Novak votes aye.
Fitch, aye.
Labby, aye.
McBride, aye.
Okay, you've got your minutes.
Thanks.
Going back to returning to the motion that was on the table to continue to November 7th and adjourn. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, vote aye. Roll call. Novak votes aye.
Fitch, aye.
Labby, aye.
McBride, aye.
All right. Everybody, thank you for your time and courtesy tonight. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.